Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, Canada's #1 Canadian management podcast, according to Apple. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our guest on this show, as promised, is the one and only Robert Carter, president of the Coffee Association of Canada and managing partner of the StrattonHunter Group. Robert has deep expertise in not only the wide-ranging industry that is the delicious beverage that is coffee, but in what makes restaurants work and how to make money doing it. Now, Sylvain, you introduced me to Robert. Where did you first meet him?
Actually, as a consultant, and he got involved with the Coffee Association, became CEO, of course, of the Coffee Association. I've been collaborating with him for a long time, and frankly, even before we started the pod. And I have no idea why we didn't have him on before.
Right. That was our surprise. It's like, how on earth has it gone so long since I
think he was probably insulted that we didn't invite him.
Well, the natural opportunity would have been when we're live podcasting at the coffee conference, but he's usually so busy, right? He's running a conference that we said
That's true.
We'll get you another time. I think, and then, but the time is up.
And he's great. He's a good leader, and when I think of food service in general in Canada, I mean, he's one of the best that we have in the country. So it's great. I'm glad that we were able to chat.
It's a great interview. Now, speaking of restaurants, Restaurant Canada, you're on the stage coming up at the RC show in Toronto. Coming up fast, right? March 8th. Where did February go?
Twice, I think, actually, for 2 panels. Yeah, with some great folks. Michael Graydon's going to be there. James Moore, the former cabinet minister, will be there. And so we're actually getting organized with some pre-calls there before the actual event. Yeah. Honestly, with panels, I just show up. I'd love to just wing it, but obviously not everyone is like me. They want to know like what questions we'll be getting. It's so boring. You want to be organic, run a panel organically, but not everyone is comfortable with that. But looking forward to, I think the food service industry is going through a lot of changes. In fact, actually here in Quebec, yesterday I was meeting with Ashton, which is a restaurant chain of 26 restaurants. Ashton was the first chain in Canada to showcase poutine, basically.
I saw that when you're not just in Quebec, La Belle Province, but you're actually in Quebec City.
Quebec City, that's right.
And I was there in the summer, had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Exploring the city. It had been since I was like a teenager, practically. It's a wonderful city, great food scene. And I saw these.
And you had poutine when you were here.
And I had poutine when I was there. Exactly. It was a great time. What are you doing in Quebec City?
Well, obviously, I'm doing some work with some companies, and of course, I'm meeting with some folks at the University of Laval on functional foods. We're also organizing another event later on this year about food innovation, and I'm also involved with the INRS, which is the Provincial Institute for Scientific Research. That is the school that teaches no undergraduate students. They only teach grad, and the idea is to train future scholars for the province. So they have about 160 profs. It's not a well-known university. It's very small, but I've been asked to be part of their strategic planning for a new center of research on food supply chain, rural food supply chains in Baie-Saint-Paul, which is about an hour east of Quebec City. So it's actually a pretty exciting project. So we're hiring right now. We're meeting tomorrow. We're hiring right now for that center.
Fantastic. Well, a big soft spot for Quebec City and the food business in Quebec. I've come to really appreciate it since doing the show. I had less awareness than I do today, certainly, of all the amazing brands that are coming out of out of Quebec. I think of like Fire Barns, for example. And several of them we're going to have on the pod. Like we've got an upcoming interview back on the podcast with our friend Vince Breton from Du Breton Pork that's based in Quebec. Anyway, let's start the show talking about, it's not new news to anybody, and we probably don't have a whole lot to say about it, but I did want to get your thoughts on the latest on the tariff file, the trade tariff file. Of course, the big news last Friday after we recorded our show was that the Supreme Court smack down Trump's IEEPA tariff strategy gamble. Now, Americans I've talked to are just trying to get their heads around this. First of all, a couple of things, one of which is this untying of this big knot of these $130 billion of tariffs. I mean, we talked about in the show a couple of months ago that Costco had gotten early in the line to sue the American government to get their money back. FedEx just launched another.
That happened a few months ago. Yeah,
that's right. In anticipation of Supreme Court judgment going this way. Now, again, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but any thoughts around the long-term implications or short-term implications to the Canadian ag industry? We got this 10% tariff that was going to be 15%, but it's still outside the bounds of CUSMA anyway. So, any early thoughts from your perspective?
Well, I think like CUSMA to me is the biggest concern. I honestly on Friday everyone was jubilant and happy. I was actually I became even more nervous, to be honest, because first of all, I'm one of those that actually believes that Washington has a plan. I think they were expecting to lose, and so that's why President Trump actually came out with new tariffs. But I must say, when you look at what's happening right now, over the last year or so, what is the most effective weapon that Donald Trump has in his toolbox? It's uncertainty, and the call Friday from the Supreme Court brought more uncertainty around tariffs, but most importantly around CUSMA. And there's been some comments made earlier this week and yesterday with the State of the Union that we are likely to see some exemptions, but not as many, and there are tariff talks. I mean, and we have a new chief negotiator, and my guess is that it's not going to be as before. I think CUSMA 2.0 will actually be a little bit different, and I don't also believe that there's going to be a different deal between the Canada and Mexico, which is why a rapprochement with Mexico is so critical at this point.
Let's stick with the U.S. for a little bit. I'm going to tie it together with something, behind the scenes, how the sausage gets made for the show. We exchange ideas during the week about what we're going to talk about. And a couple of times this settlement from Bayer around glyphosate for $7.2 billion kind of has come up a couple of times. And I was just trying to find the right time to talk about it. You know what spurred me to talk about it today is I was reading that the Trump government in the U.S. has decided to pull some emergency. There's a caveat that basically says the government can demand a thing be made for the security of the country, and they're demanding that glyphosate get made for the security of the farmers. Now, of course, the MAHA movement is beside themselves, but it does seem interesting in the same periods of time that
I've always believed that there would be eventually a clash over glyphosate, to be honest, because MAHA doesn't fit well with the use of glyphosate at all. And but of course, one of Trump's major base is our farmers, and so and I think we're seeing this unfolding. On the one side, you're seeing Monsanto / Bayer running out of money, and they have thousands and thousands of claims to deal with. I believe when the acquisition happened of Monsanto, they actually put aside $16 billion for lawsuits. They're starting to believe that it's not enough, and so they're trying to be ahead of this and try to settle all cases with $7 billion. I think that's what's happening, and of course everyone has an idea or an opinion on glyphosate. I'm of the mind that if used wisely and responsibly, glyphosate is not a risk. But many lobby groups claim otherwise. I don't agree with that point of view, but it is a politically charged topic now.
Now, what is the Canadian context for glyphosate? Could you remind me and the listeners what are the rules here in Canada? We're talking about the U.S. context, but it is a global issue, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For glyphosate, I mean, basically, you have to follow the application rules. Before, what really happened in the past is that farmers just listen to their vendors and spray the hell out of out of their fields like a lot. They put too much of it. But now with precision agriculture, I mean, farmers are incentivized to save money on inputs. If you're spraying all over the place, you're spraying money. And now they're much more precise now with AI and drones looking at plant science and soil science. So they're much more strategic in terms of spraying glyphosate than, say, a few years ago. And so, and larger farms absolutely do not waste money spraying too much. And so that's why I'm a believer that many farmers out there are incredibly responsible. So they are no strict, well, they are guidelines to follow for sure, but I think these guidelines are incredibly appropriate for the environment and public health as well.
Would you say Canadian farmers are in a better place vis-a-vis their use of glyphosate than their counterparts in America?
There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt. Because, I mean, some groups are actually claiming glyphosate should be illegal. We should actually get farmers to spray something else. But alternatives are even more dangerous than glyphosate. That's the thing. That's what they're not saying. Because most of these groups, let's face it, most of these groups are organic farmers or groups representing organic farming. And organic farming is, if you don't know what you're doing, can be dangerous. I mean, a lot of recalls are related to organically grown products because of E. coli and salmonella and things like that. So, I mean, we have to be very, very careful. But I do think that glyphosate and biotechnologies have actually helped increase yields and allow agriculture to become more efficient, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind.
All right, let's go in a different direction. Loblaw's release of their new store plans got your wheels turning about the overall concentration or availability of grocery stores in Canada vis-a-vis the U.S. You did some interesting numbers. Now, I had a couple of questions for you. I looked at one of your charts, and you'd pulled the.
Yeah, what did you think of the numbers that I came up with?
Well, my question was, I looked at the NCIS code that you pulled. To get the data, and it looks like, and here's my question, it's clear that it doesn't include convenience stores. My question is...
No, it doesn't, and specialty stores as well.
Well, that was my question, because if I think about modern, how people are finding, shopping for groceries, I think of retailers like Dollarama or Giant Tiger. Like Giant Tiger has a pretty significant fresh...
They wouldn't classify as supermarkets or grocery stores.
Yeah, and then of course there's a lot of Dollarama being mostly dry, but still
1,600.
Yeah, and then you've also got, we've talked about this before, Amazon is a massive player, not in Canada in fresh, but in pantry and shelf stable. So I guess the analysis to me was interesting, but in the modern context, I mean, you don't have meal kits or all these other things that factor into where and how people get their food. On the surface of it, it looked like the concentration of grocery stores was greater per capita in Canada, I think. But, I think for both sides of the border, it got my wheels turning.
The point of the numbers, I mean, basically the point that I was trying to make with the data is that we have fewer grocery stores and supermarkets per 100,000 Canadians than we had 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, we had 22 supermarkets and grocery stores for every 100,000 Canadians. We're down to about 19 now.
Yeah.
The reason why I did that is that every year, we see grocers come out and say, we're building new stores. We're renovating new stores or stores. We're converting some stores and things like that. They don't talk about how many they're closing ever. I think Loblaw did it once a few years ago, but that's it. And so I do wonder about access, because food access is part of food affordability. If you have to drive 50 kilometers to get to affordable food, that's a bit of a problem. And so it doesn't look at distances. You're right. Doesn't look at the modern way of food retailing, because with categories, things have shifted. The demand have shifted towards non-traditionals.
I think
for sure.
Even within the Loblaw's family, I think of Shoppers Drug Mart. I mean, my Shoppers Drug Mart has a fairly significant. They're like a convenience store from that perspective too, right? So there's
That's
There's a
right.
lot. There's a lot more
But I
food
do.
available. But
What's interesting is that, I mean, if I go with your argument that, okay, people are going to dollar stores, to why isn't that phenomena happening in the U.S. then?
oh, it
Because you
is.
look at the data, it's 19 per
Yeah, yeah.
100,000 25 years ago, and it's still about 19 now.
Mm.
So it's not happening in the U.S. Why?
Well, I would say Amazon is definitely. What I'd like to know is, and maybe there's some work to be done, but Amazon is now a $158 billion retailer in America. And if they're not in that number, I'm not sure it's capturing the whole picture either. Because
Yeah.
whether it's dollar
That's why
store
I
or
wanted.
whatever.
So that's why I went to the U.S. to see. Okay, so Canada's going like this. We have fewer grocery stores for our population. So what's going on in the U.S.? And I came up. It's pretty stable. It's pretty
Interesting.
stable. Now I can't look at Europe because Europe is so different.
Yeah.
But in Canada, because I think there's like a grocery store for two people in Europe. I mean, it's just.
I would say this is a very interesting project for an aspiring PhD student of yours to kind of look at the whole picture.
I think so. I think you're right. Absolutely.
Speaking of new
And I
stores,
think I can actually get you as an advisor. Why not?
there you go. I'll just point him in the right direction. God knows I can't do the math.
Exactly.
Speaking of new stores and grocery stores that aren't traditional grocery stores, Costco has announced a new store opening up not too far from me in Oakville. They just opened up
in Oakville.
actually just near there. They opened up one of their trade, like their cash and carry big trade stores locations that in those parts. So 115 locations, right? I mean, it's just a talk about concentration. 115 Costco's. I never would have imagined the thing with such a big box. Did you?
Yeah, no, they're growing fast. I mean, I think Costco was opening for a very long time, one store every 2-3 years. Now it's like one a year, two a year now. So they're picking up the pace here because they're seeing demand for sure. And I think honestly, grocers know that. That's why Loblaws is deploying, opening new stores. Metro's doing the same thing. It's all discounts, and so that's why you can see that grocers are absolutely adapting for sure. So very interesting. But Costco, I mean, it's a really incredible model. They have good relationships with their vendors as well. They pay the employees very well too. I rarely see any complaints about Costco in general because it's just a simple model, really.
Yeah. It's a fascinating business. I mean, if you look at and you're right, they're absolutely lighting up the numbers too. I mean, globally, I think they're up like 8%, which is just incredible on their size of their base. And it's a fascinating business, beyond the scope of our
it's about volume. It's not about margins. That's the thing about Costco compared to others. Because they make money at selling memberships, so they don't have to worry. It's plus 15. That's it. They cover salaries. They cover the box, and that's it. 2 loss leaders, one in the front, one in the back, hot dogs, chicken. It's just really simple. And I do wonder why Sam's Club never actually succeeded in Canada, because they have a very similar model, but they never were able to replicate the success of Costco.
That's a great question, and I debate that, and we debate that with people at Walmart in the U.S. because Sam's in the U.S. is like a $90 billion retailer. Now they are coming up second behind Costco as well. They're not beating Costco in America, but there are alone you lose track of these things. Walmart became a retail's first $1 trillion valued company, even though they lost the biggest retailer mantle to Amazon last week. I don't know if you saw that, but the biggest retailer in the world is now Amazon. Now, of course, a lot of that's their B2B business with their, we had someone on from AWS. Anyway, we're diving a bit deep into that one. Let's move on. You sent me a note that we've been talking about wines and spirits and beers, and there's no question one of the biggest trends that we're seeing in that category is the RTD, the ready-to-drinks, these pre-mixed drinks. And most provinces that are run by provincial liquor, that's the purview of the provincial liquor store. Now, in Quebec, apparently, they're going to start distributing them to convenience stores and other places. Do I have that right?
Oh, I got to tell you, I really was shocked because provinces have been very protective of their liquor boards. Mm-hmm. With the exception of Ontario, but in Quebec, it's been very protective of the liquor boards. In the Atlantic, they're allowing them to sell non-alcoholic drinks, all that stuff. They want to increase revenues, right? But now, for the first time in many years, I saw a government allowing more competition for a category, the RTDs, so this may actually open up the door to more competition, and maybe this is a signal to Quebecers that, you know what, it's okay to have more competition beyond the SAQ, and perhaps we could start seeing that in other provinces as well. Of course, Doug Ford's in his aim were the beer stores, so he got rid of them. Thank goodness. It was just a ridiculous model.
He didn't get rid of them. He didn't get rid of them because they forgot nobody was going to take back the empties.
Oh, I think he did. He didn't think about the whole cycle of recycles for sure.
No, that fell apart. That fell apart because a lot of the people who started carrying wine said, "I'm not taking back empties." So they had to roll that back, and it's the beer store who's been doing a great job. Actually, to be fair, they do an amazing job.
I've always felt that the beer store would actually play a role in recycling, to be honest. But is that going to continue? I don't know, because over time, really. Time will tell, but in Quebec, I think the SAQ is so desperate for revenues because people are drinking less now. Yeah. It's a -4, like in volume, it's -4 every year now. So if you want to look good before the government, you have to increase sales. But now you saw the Quebec government basically going against the SAQ's will, which is really interesting.
Well, what's interesting to me is, as an lifelong Ontario resident, is, Quebec led with putting wine into, wine and beer into convenience stores decades before Ontario did, for example, just to name a province. And now the coin has flipped. Ontario's got, the big shifts into the market, and Quebec is now, that's a big first step, an RTD outside of of that area. So anyway, it's fascinating stuff. Let's take a break now. Let's get to our speaking of fascinating, interview with the one and only Robert Carter. Robert, welcome to the Food Professor Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
It's about time we have you on, Robert.
I know. I listen to all the great conversations you guys have, and envious I'm not part of the dialogue.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Welcome to the show. Thanks for making time for us. Obviously, we all know each other, but we shouldn't assume that anyone else does in terms of knowing you. So tell us about yourself, what you do for a living.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have a full-time role where I'm CEO of a group called the StrattonHunter Group, which is a management consulting firm specializing in the food industry. And I've been leading that organization since about 2018. Prior to that, I had the pleasure of working with a global strategy company called the NPD Group, now known as Circana, as they were bought by private equity. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were affiliated with them before. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Connecting the dots right now in my head.
Yeah, exactly. So, with the NPD Group, I oversaw their food service division here in Canada. I had some U.S. and global responsibilities as well. During that time, I also sat on a couple boards, one of them being the Coffee Association. And then when I was out on my own in StrattonHunter, was approached by the association to help with some, work within the association, and then took on the role as president of the Coffee Association. So I call it my giving back to the industry as well.
Well, it gets to the point of our conversation. It's going to be kind of a two-part, two-stream conversation. First, we want to talk about coffee and the coffee industry, and then we want to move into a broader discussion of the restaurant trade and observation. So we're going to get both halves. You're a 2-for-1 special for us, so it's a great
right. Exactly. Still just one bill, but two for one special.
You're like a BOGO. Exactly. You're a BOGO interview.
That's right.
All right, let's talk about coffee for a little bit. So, how are the Canadian coffee operators navigating? And I know you represent from the folks who roast to the folks who retail and everything in between. Sure. How are they navigating the persistent input volatility? I mean, green coffee's futures have been very, very high. There's currency risk. We're seeing some relief, we think. So what's going on, and help us with their perspective.
Yeah, for sure. The coffee industry in Canada is very, very interesting. Coffee is the number one consumed beverage in the Canadian market. So it's a very important industry. And when you think of Canada and you think of coffee, it's really ingrained into the culture of Canadians. So it's an important industry. It's an important product and culturally important as well. And it's been this way for many, many years. In fact, our per capita consumption of coffee in Canada is one of the highest in the world, only second or third to countries like Italy and whatnot. So a lot of deep, good sort of history of coffee within Canada. And, as we all know, after sort of COVID and supply chain disruptions, there was a number of different areas that have affected the industry. And most recently, areas such as, record high green bean prices and volatility from countries of origin and whatnot. So that's put a lot of pressure on the coffee operators within the Canadian market. So, what are they doing to offset some of the volatility? There's a lot of different options that are available to operators. Obviously, the biggest one is price fluctuating and how they need to either absorb those prices or, see some of that price being translated into increased offerings to the consumers and whatnot. So, we have seen the price of a cup of coffee slowly tick up over the last couple of years. And, the reality is that coffee in Canada, I would suggest, was somewhat undervalued when you look at the entire, bean to cup process. So although the coffee prices for consumers are increasing slightly, it's still a great value considering the entire journey of bean to cup and the product that Canadians are getting.
In terms of, coffee, can you explain why do you think we haven't been able to actually increase that price or that value to Canadians? Is it because of macroeconomic pressures? Is it because of our culture? What do you think that is?
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons why. Historically, the coffee segment was what you would call your typical sort of quick service coffee environment, and the quality of coffee or the coffee serving coming through that channel was, it was suitable to what Canadians were looking for. And then, over the last 10 years, I would say there's been a real sort of influx of innovation coming into the coffee segment. So we're, seeing a lot more of the specialty type coffees, the espresso based beverages, the cold beverages. And just as a natural sort of growth in the innovation and the product selection, those items are priced higher than just your basic cup of coffee. So, we're seeing a natural price increase as consumers are choosing to spend more in areas of innovation overall. At the same time, there's a lot of quality, brewed coffee that's coming through on the specialty coffee channel. And that's also resulting in consumers choosing to spend a little bit more for that quality. But the other factor, and Sylvain, you'll know this, that, consumers are just becoming much more educated about the products that they're consuming, both, food and beverage. And as they start to understand and learn more about their coffee, countries of origin, specialty nature of it, and the flavor profiles and whatnot, they are choosing to consume, quality coffee, and they're willing to pay for that as well.
So, as CEO of the Coffee Association in Canada, what's keeping you up at night right now? I can guess a few factors for sure, but given the environment we're in right now, given what has happened in the last 12 months or so, what are some of the things that really you'll pay attention to over the next several months?
Yeah, great question. And the reality is that, the Coffee Association of Canada has been around for 40, 50 years. And as a trade organization, there's a number of different areas of focus for us to ensure that we've got a good, solid coffee industry in Canada. And, the reality is that the association is in the best place it has been since the history of the association. We have more members now than we've ever had. So we're pushing upwards of 70 members. We are at a higher level in terms of our government relations and our government sort of lobbying than we ever have. We're working directly with the federal government.
And that's the reason why there is an association in the first place. Because when I talk to people not related to the association, they often are surprised by the fact that Canada has a coffee association. But you're explaining why we have one, why we have an association.
Yeah, exactly. And it pains me every time I hear that statement about, I didn't know there was an association. But
to be coffee in Canada?
But to be transparent, we've gone from, when I first started this journey about 4 or 5 years ago with the association, yes, we did have an awareness issue. And we've definitely gone from, hey, I didn't know there was an association, to now working with the highest echelons of the federal government. Right. And, I'll give you a great example. We host a day in Ottawa every year. We're on our 4th year on International Coffee Day, where
that's in the fall, right? In the fall, October?
October, exactly. And we invite members of the federal government. We do this with an ambassador from a country of origin. So we've done it with the ambassador to Brazil, the ambassador to Colombia.
Oh, nice.
Ambassador to Guatemala. So we get 15 ambassadors. We get members of parliament from all parties, Liberals, Bloc, PC, attending this event. And during that day, I have the fortunate ability to go around and meet with all these different folks. And that has now led to the establishment of a coffee caucus. So the first time in our history, we actually have a government coffee caucus. And all of this is to say
that sounds delightful. Everyone should be part of that.
Exactly. That's right. Well, we've got, a number of federal MPs as part of this. But the whole point of all of this is to ensure that the federal government understands the importance of this industry, which is in the billions in the Canadian market, employing hundreds of thousands of Canadians. We've got a 100-year supply chain, across North America and global. So this is an important industry, and our goal is to make sure that through our government relations that they recognize this, and any items or issues that affect the industry, we're part of that conversation.
That's good, because often when you go to Ottawa and you interact with, say, Ag Canada, they often look at you as a commodity-based group, like canola and beef and pork. We make all these commodities, but we don't grow coffee. But to your point, Robert, there are so many people rely on coffee to make a living, and the sector is so important to the Canadian economy.
It's so true. And, it's hard to be the political party in power and watch, inflation, particularly on a basic cup of coffee, slowly tick up. Everybody, again, it's the number one consumed beverage in the Canadian market. So it's very top of mind. It's very, transparent, and it touches Canadians' lives every single day. I mean, we have such good relationships with countries of origin. They love doing business with Canada. I was in Guatemala last year speaking to their trade association about doing business in Canada. Our partnership with the U.S., obviously tariffs, and sorry, so I didn't even get to your question about what's keeping me up at night. Yeah. But, things, the tariff situation.
Well, anytime you want to talk about CUSMA, you go for it.
Yeah, well, tariffs, that has probably during my time been the most disruptive situation that we've experienced. A lot of people don't realize that coffee is not part of CUSMA. So you hear the CUSMA exemptions and whatnot to the U.S. Coffee is not part of that. So coffee has been hit with tariffs from day one and continues. The new SCOTA ruling on the fentanyl tariffs has taken some pressure off. But
most listeners would probably think coffee's not grown in America, though. So how talk about more about why we're even talking about coffee and American tariffs.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a number of coffee roasters that shipped to the U.S. and that's one of our biggest trade partners from a finished coffee standpoint. So all of the products from Canada into the U.S. are facing the tariffs from the U.S. and coffee is one of those items that has just sort of fallen through the cracks because we're not CUSMA compliant.
So the American consumers are paying for that. Is that what we're seeing? The American.
We're seeing a lot of effects. So we're seeing the American consumers paying for that. We're seeing the destabilization of the Canadian companies because now they have to ship their productions down to the U.S. There's real job losses taking place in Canada because of this as well. So, we've been working very closely with Global Affairs Minister of Finance, and I'm testifying in front of the House of Commons and the Trade Committee on the impacts of tariff. The reality is we've had, again, 100, we have some companies that are 100 years old here in Canada that have been doing business with the U.S. in coffee. So it's a real impact to the industry.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's broaden the lens. Let's go beyond coffee, as fascinating and as a lovely beverage as it is. Let's talk about restaurants in general. So tapping into the rest of your broader expertise. So, we were talking about it on the show last week. Restaurant Canada data is showing almost half of all restaurants in Canada lose money, barely break even. What are the 3 or 4 key attributes you discuss with your clients that help them shift to the profitable side of the ledger and importantly, stay there?
Yeah, great question. And just to give some clarity, so our role with StrattonHunter Group is that we specialize within sort of the food sector, and we work with a lot of the restaurant chains, the larger chains, and work with them specifically about understanding market conditions, areas of opportunity, how to operate their organizations, effectively, and what are some of the trends from a consumer standpoint as well. So, when you hear things like input costs are continuing to go up and driving greater expenses on the operator side, and they're losing money, that is suggesting the rising food costs, the labor costs, the rent costs, all of these input costs are really making this a very difficult industry to be successful in overall. So, unfortunately, what we've seen over the last decade is a lot more of the chain operators continuing to expand and grow, where those independents, those mom and pops and the specialized one-offs, they're having a much harder time being successful. So, we're seeing a lot more of those operators closing because they just can't sustain the expense of running a restaurant, and the margins just continue to shrink. So, what are some of the conversations about addressing that? Technology in this industry has been notorious for being sort of behind the curve in technology, but there's a lot of technology solutions which are happening that are offsetting some of those costs. It's some of the basic fundamentals of just having good financial strategies, good planning strategy, and really understanding your business and looking at the metrics, which surprisingly a lot of operators just don't have a good grasp of that. So, some of the basic fundamentals, but there's no denying that this is a tough industry, and it's not getting any easier.
In terms of attractability, I mean, how do you see the food service sector right now with menu prices going up? And we know that there are closures here and there, and we often hear about restaurant operators having a hard time making ends meet. Restaurants Canada is out there providing some of that data. So how do you see that right now? How do you see the sector as it is?
Yeah, it's, the restaurant industry in Canada has been resilient for sure over, since the inception and the growth of the industry and whatnot. And, I would suggest that we're at a crossroads of a number of different trends that are taking place. One of the biggest impacts to this industry has been the whole off-premise and the Uber Eats and the delivery and whatnot. That was a small percentage of the industry pre-pandemic. Then it skyrocketed, and now, on average, most restaurant chains, 30% of their sales will go through that off-premise channel, and so that's really eating into the margins. You're losing
good or evil.
Direct
good or evil, Robert? Is that good or evil? Like we had a conversation with Roni, and he said, I wouldn't have made it through COVID without it. I love these guys. but they got to pay them a fee. They got to it's running two businesses basically. So good or evil? What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I can't say one way if it's good or evil, because I believe you need to have multiple revenue streams, and like every sort of revenue channel, you've got to look at the strategy associated with it. So because it's such a impactful area of your business that people don't really structure for when they first started, now that's forced on them, they may not have a good strategy. But we have lots of great examples of operators where we've embraced it, had a good strategy, worked with the third-party aggregators on a partnership, and it's been very successful. So you do need to put resources against it. It can be a win for your business, but you got to have a good strategy behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what about AI? I mean, there's lots of talk about AI, of course, and how do you see AI impacting digital ordering, loyalty ecosystems? Well, how do you see AI impacting the sector?
Yeah, we're big fans of AI. We've been working with AI for a number of years now, and we look at things from a sort of a data perspective and a consumer insights and connecting and whatnot. So, when we look at AI, and we have a 360 assessment strategy that we do with our clients, where we evaluate their entire sort of operational brand flow of their business. And as part of that, we create what we call an AI readiness score. And that shows them where AI could help their business overall. But the reality is that AI tools are making the workflow process, the connection with consumers, the pricing strategies, the reams of data that businesses are creating every single day, and starting to make it actionable. And a lot of the work that we do is identifying how to take that data, use those AI tools to make smarter business decisions. It's a game changer. And it's one of the areas that restaurants today are still really far behind. But you look at, brands like McDonald's, which bought, an AI company a couple of years ago, using it in their drive-through as an example. So there's a ton of opportunities. I think we're just scratching the surface.
Robert, I want to do a follow-up on the AI thing just quickly. It feels like,
Sure.
In the retail world, the evolution of online platforms like Shopify actually help level the playing field for a lot of retailers, right? The small retailer could have a nice, powerful platform equal to a mid-size or big platform. And it did level the playing field in terms of technology. Do you see it that way with AI as well, that the small indies can use this tool and there's no limit. Everybody pays the same fee to ChatGPT, and it's just ingenuity. And now everybody's armed with not dissimilar technology in some ways.
Yeah, it's true. It all comes down to resource management. You look at a restaurant, I don't know, 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, you had a chef, they had a concept, they wanted to create good food, get it into the consumers' mouths. They'd open a bricks and mortar store. Customers would come in, word of mouth would be great. Now you look at opening a restaurant, you've got digital and social. You've got technology to run your operations. Sure. You've got, so many different factors that will make you successful. And so that ties into your, effective resource management. Just being a chef's not good enough. You've got to have a wide range of skills. Now you throw AI on top of that. So now you've got to be an AI expert as well. So, it's difficult. And that's where, firms like StrattonHunter really step in, because we have that team of those experts and we provide those as a resource. But for independents that just start out, it's a real challenge in today's industry, particularly, you're competing against some of the big guys that have all of those infrastructure in place. We've created a tool we call Performant, and it's an AI platform tool where we can run the entire operations, and we do our audits using this tool. So, for a franchise or a restaurant franchisor, we put their entire operation systems through our Performant, from their sales, their financials, their operating procedures, their menus, their costing, everything. And that gives us real-time information and recommendations on how they could be running their business better. So, I think it's those types of tools from an AI standpoint that are going to be beneficial versus, some of the basic AI tools where people got to figure out, how do I make this useful? We're starting to see that AI tools being developed in lots of different industries. And in this industry, because it's, it's a fairly complex industry, the restaurant industry, but over the next 5 years,
right? It's got its idiosyncratic, it's got an idiosyncratic nature, like many, right? So generic prompts don't get you where you need to be. All right. No. Let's cast our mind forward here. If you look ahead, I don't know, 5 years, what's the, and I want to focus this now both on the coffee industry and the restaurant industry. What are the biggest threats and opportunities here? So I can think of cost structure and regulation, and labor shortages, and shifting consumer habits. Though I don't consider that a threat, I consider that just the part of doing business. But how do you see it?
Yeah, so you talk about the threats and then opportunities, and most people who know me will say I always skew to the optimistic side. It's just who I am. But, I think if you look at the challenges or the threats from a coffee industry standpoint, we have real global impacts taking place. We've got climate change taking place that's affecting countries of origin. We've got shift in wage and pricing strategies that are going to have an effect. We've got, crops are so volatile to a number of different issues. And then, coffee is a commodity. So we did see, some of the stock speculators getting in there and really manipulating the price. So, there's those types of elements that are out of the hands of the, coffee, which is a big impact overall. On the restaurant side, some of the threats that are taking place, are some of the continuing rising food costs, the inputs, the labor, those types of things, and then just the competitive nature of large chains and whatnot, and then lack of real estate. So these are all sort of the challenges. On the optimistic side, the restaurant industry and coffee included overall, Canadians, again, love their coffee. Canadians love their restaurants. We go out of home to restaurants on average. Half the population goes out every day to visit a restaurant of some sort, which is one of the highest penetration rates globally. And, younger consumers, these Gen Zs and Gen Y, they're growing up on the convenience of, ready prepared foods and, third parties bringing it to their doors. And, no matter what you hear, anyone tells you, cooking at home is declining. It's just a reality. And generations have, start less and less cooking at home. So the restaurant segment is an important segment, and it addresses a real need in terms of our consumption overall. That being said, we do have things like GLP-1s, which are really starting to regulate people's consumption patterns. In the U.S., they saw one of the first times ever, drop in per capita consumption of food overall because of GLP-1. So, there are lots of different impacts, but the reality is that out-of-home consumption in restaurants and whatnot is a real part of our lifestyle, our economy, and will continue to be a growth area.
Well, this has been a fantastic discussion. So, for anyone who wants to get in touch and learn more, maybe do some work with you or just learn more about the Coffee Association and that, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, they can reach out to the Coffee Association of Canada website, and there's a form. My email's there. Feel free to reach out. We have a monthly webinar that we do that's open great. To the public. For the StrattonHunter Group, you can reach out to StrattonHunter. That's StrattonHunter.com, or send an email directly to me at robert.carter@StrattonHunter. I'm also on LinkedIn, all the social channels. So, feel free to reach out anytime.
Well, long overdue, but what a great conversation. On behalf of Sylvain and myself, thanks so much for joining us here on the Food Professor Podcast. Great to get a dive into both these industries, and thanks for making the time for us.
Yeah, my pleasure, and look forward to our next conversation.
All right, we are back, and I got a couple of restaurant things to talk to you about, just staying on the theme of restaurants here. So, big news on the restaurant front, two reservations company merging, Resi and Talk. Yeah. I've seen, I had no idea. Did you know that they were owned by Amex? I had no idea. Did you know that?
No. No, right? But they were acquired by Amex. What was really interesting, Amex bought both without creating any synergies between them.
Well, they were designed for different things. They were designed for different things, I guess, at the point, that
I know. One is for fine dining, the other's for experiences, I guess.
I guess.
But now they're merging. So Amex has decided to actually just merge both together.
Yeah.
To compete against Open Table.
Well, and some numbers, to put some numbers to it, together, Resi and Talk will have 25,000 venues, but Open Table is a behemoth. I book restaurants a lot. I see all these brands, but they got 60,000 restaurants worldwide.
Yeah, they're dominant by far, but I think it's interesting. Amex's move is long overdue and very interesting. If you want to rival Open Table, you need capacity, but I suspect that they want to broaden also. They want to broaden the scope of the application by inviting people that are looking for other things, I suppose.
Well,
it's not direct. It's not in direct competition with Open Table, because Open Table has the business of the mainstream fine dining outlets, if you will. But with this new combo, I think it's going to attract some like people like yourself, the sophisticated elites.
Like I don't choose my restaurants based on
looking for something different because everything else is not worthy, sort of thing.
Well, I always make sure you get something special when we're together. I know.
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
My one comment on this, and I think the some of the rationale is actually the integration into platforms like Toast. So these 1-800 online big platforms. One of which is Toast, which is the rival of many traditional ways that restaurants work with partners and set up. But it is a 1-800 number. You don't have a sales rep. But it looks like, I think one of the moves here is to get better integration with platforms like Toast. And therefore, because Amex is all about the shmoney. They want money. They want stuff on that card. And if they can kind of learn something from Toast that then applies to the reservation,
they're gonna get a lot of data. I gotta tell you, they're gonna get serious about data for sure.
Yeah, 100%. These guys are no slackers when it comes to you might get a special offer on your Amex card to get a different Amex card because we know you love.
I bet you tonight that you're gonna go on Facebook and you get some advertisement to get you to some fancy restaurant using one of these applications. I'm sure.
Well, speaking of fancy restaurants, big news here in the Toronto area. Eggslut is coming to Toronto. Do you know Eggslut?
Eggslut?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
Is that the name?
That is the name. They are an LA-based...
Eggslut. Is that legal? I mean, oh, wow.
Well, I've visited. They've got a location in the area in Vegas. I didn't see it.
So what's special about them?
They serve up their sandwiches like a sandwich and a brioche bread. Very creative. So you get a kind of a half. You get a brioche stuffed with all kinds of different creatively put together omelets, all based on egg, and it's kind of like a half paper. It's very funky, right? It's very LA. Very kind of food truck.
I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of them.
They're coming to Toronto. They're going to be on King Street. So you and I are going to go to Eggslut next time you're in town once they're open because, So
if it's cheaper, I guess you're paying?
And still in the restaurant area, we mentioned a bunch of episodes. Bobby Flay was coming to Toronto, Bobby Flay's restaurant. And they just announced today or yesterday, I think, where they're going to go. They're going to go to the Well, this big work, live, play, shopping place in downtown Toronto. So that's going to be their first location. We're trying to get Bobby on the mic. So stay tuned for that. Maybe Chuck Hughes. Maybe Chuck Hughes, our friend Chuck Hughes, Chef Chuck Hughes.
Well, he's been on our mic already, so.
Well, he's been there twice, and he's one of the only people to ever beat Bobby Flay in competition. So
that's
maybe we got an inside.
Iron Chef America.
That's right, Iron Chef. So maybe we got an inside.
And the special ingredient that night was lobster.
Lobster, right? I was gonna say some shellfish, but it was lobsters.
Yeah. Now, so Chuck had an advantage.
Look at my segues now. Like, you're going to finish off still talking about seafood. Congratulations to Canada's Charlotte Langley, a 2-times guest on this show for her delicious nice cans. If you're watching us on YouTube, there you are.
Yes.
This is
the sardines.
the winning bespoke sardine chosen by the New York Times Wirecutter. I love Wirecutter, by the way. If you don't know the New York Times Wirecutter, it's kind of like the Consumer Reports. They review stuff. It's a fantastic resource. But they did tinned sardines, and her sardine, nice can, turned out to be one of the top sardines ranked in the world. Now, interestingly, Brunswick sardines, there's my Brunswick sardine, because you know I'm a big sardine fan.
Yep.
A brand with Canadian heritage and still some manufacturing. I think it's owned by Taiwanese company, FCF Fishery, who bought them out of Bumblebee Foods. But apparently they still make in Blacks Harbor, New Brunswick, the world's largest sardine canning plant. So we got a little bit of fun. We got congratulations to Charlotte. She worked so hard and she's so creative. We'll see her actually. I think she's judging the oyster shucking competition at Restaurants Canada show. Okay. So we'll have to go see her. And
so we'll see her on the floor. That's great.
And congratulate her in person. And that'll be great. And I'm
looking forward to the RC show. It's going to be great. It's going to be lots of celebrities, and including you, of course.
Not on the stage, just wandering around, not having samples. That's me.
Yeah.
All right.
And not having, I know. Yeah. There's something weird about you about that. I mean, you're a food guy and you don't take samples. What is wrong with you?
That's a long story. That's a long list. We don't have time to get into that. But all the things that are wrong with me. Anyway, that's a wrap. That's it for this show. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Michael LeBlanc, media entrepreneur, and you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Take care.